Alright, so I've been slacking kind of recently on making videos, editing them, and uploading them. So I do apologize in advance before this video continues. In this video, we're going to be going over the initial cost that my 18 by 32 shop that I recently built cost me, and what you could expect to run into while building your own. When I built this building, I had a couple things in mind. First off, I wanted something that I could pull my F350 into without having any sort of space issues. I could open the doors all the way up, and I could have plenty of room for all of my toolboxes and other accessories of that nature. We're going to cover three main topics in this video. The first one being how much it cost me to get in the gate, so to speak. How much did all the material cost between the wood, the roofing tin, screws, the floor, everything. So we're going to go over that. The next cost is the site work. How much it cost me to prep the area, clear the area, and dispose of all the trash that was in the area, as well as level the ground out and semi-prep it for the initial base. The last thing we're going to cover is my savings and where I was able to cut a lot of money. This is very important if you plan on doing this for yourself, as you're going to want to save as much as you can. That way you can take that money and put it elsewhere, either into the building or into your tools, into your projects, into whatever it may be. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Before I get into the cost breakdown of all the materials used in the video that you've seen on the screen, I would like to give a disclaimer that most of these prices that I was able to grab was with or without tax. So prices will fluctuate as lumber prices do fluctuate over time. Everybody knows this. And general material costs in your area are going to be very different from my area. Please also note that some of these prices, like I said, I did have tax included, especially some of the bigger ticket items, but we'll get into that later. So first off and foremost, as you saw in episode 1, we were pouring the posts. For the posts, I bought 9 16-foot 4x4 treated, as well as 5 12-foot 4x4 treated. The 16-footers came in at $252, and the 12-footers came in at $100. And to sink those in the ground, we bought 14 bags of 80-pound concrete. That came into a total of $96 total for that. Now, in episode 2, I went ahead and did the header boards. The header boards were both 2x8 and 2x10. I bought those in 16-foot links. I bought 4 of each, and as for the 2x10 16s, those came in at $84 for all 4, and the 2x8s came in at $60 for all 4. Now, you probably also noticed in episode 2 that I went ahead and started doing the rafters. So the rafters were 2x6 treated, 20 foot long. I bought 20 of those, and those came in at $482 with tax. Now, as you see in between each of those rafters, I did do a 2x6 board. I ended up buying 4 of those boards at 16 foot long, and that came in at $52. Now we can kind of dig into episode 3, where I started putting up the walls as well as all the supports for the walls. So here's the material rundown, and I'm going to list the prices afterwards. 28 2x4 16 footers, 4 2x4 12 footers, 12 2x4 studs or 96 inches long. The 2x4 16s came in at $252. The 2x4 12s came in at $28. And the 2x4 studs came in at $48. Now, underneath the walls, I did do a barrier, a treated barrier of 2x6s. Those came in at 2x6 16 footers. I bought 4 of those for $68. And I bought 2 12 footers for $26. Now, the other big thing in episode 3 is the OSB sheeting that I did. I bought 34 sheets of 4x8 7/16 thickness. I do kind of wish, looking back at it now, that I did go half-inch. However, this was a much cheaper alternative, as it only came in at $520. Now, after we got the walls up and we got those all screwed down, we needed to throw some tin on the roof. I got a whole stack of 28 sheets for $200. Now, to hold everything together, you're going to need screws, and in my case, you're also going to need lag bolts and roofing screws. So I bought 2 5-pound boxes of 3-inch deck screws, T25, one 5-pound box of 1 5/8" deck screws, and one box of roofing screws. I am not sure on the length, but I will show the video on the screen. All 4 of those boxes together cost me a grand total of $140 out the door. Now, all in all, between all these materials, it cost me a grand total of $2,408 if you've been keeping track. For a bare structure with no electrical and nothing else of that sort, honestly and truthfully, that's not too bad. Now, also in part 3, I went ahead and put a slag floor in. This is crushed mill slag. This was a 20-ton dump truck load. One load. I did not get 2 loads, and I also put down a sheet of plastic. Now, I would like to keep in mind that that sheet of plastic I already had on hand. I actually had that extra from a previous project, so I paid $0 for that. However, I will look up what a sheet of that plastic costs and post a picture of it on the screen here. But that slag delivered to my door, and I went ahead and tipped the driver while I was at it. Cost me a grand total of $1,000. Now, the other thing that I did off camera was I went ahead and ran electrical to the shop. I'm only going to be pushing about 50 amps. I don't plan on pushing anything higher than that. So I went with a slightly smaller setup versus a, running 4-gauge wire or anything like that, or a quad-aught wire. So between the wire and the box, plus a handful of breakers, it cost me $553 with tax from Home Depot. I also had the Romex wire on hand, as well as a handful of other wire and other necessities for putting stuff into the box. So I will not be able to give you guys a price on that. However, you can go buy a handful of rolls from Home Depot or judge pricing based on your application. Now, to make the shop a little pretty and also to hopefully protect the OSB until I can buy some extra metal for the outside to protect it from the elements, I went ahead and bought 5 gallons of paint. This was a masonry paint from Home Depot as well. This was a Behr product, if I remember correctly. For the 5 gallons of paint, I also got it on discount. It was $137, which is not too bad at all. Now, grand total, if you've been keeping track once again, the entire cost of this building, what did it cost me out the door? Grand total, I have about $4,300 in this building. Now, of course, you may be like, actually, it should be $4,100. I'm going ahead and throwing a little bit of extra of some of the extra stuff that I've done to the building. Now, recently, something else that I did off camera was I went ahead and wired up an exhaust fan in. I went to a local building supplier, and I bought one of their roll-around 24-inch fans, something that you would see at birthday parties and stuff like that. I went ahead and took that and screwed it up to the top corner of the building and brought the wires down to where I can still control the low and high setting as well as the off setting on the fan. That fan alone cost me $200 out the door. And quite frankly, I am very glad that I did that because the shop does get very warm very quickly. Now, some of the other stuff that I have not mentioned is stuff like the spray foam I used in the corners, the metal soffitting that I used for the eave, as well as for the corners of the building, which I will be swapping that out hopefully in the future for something different, especially once I do walls. I'm going to do something that's going to seal up a lot better than what I have now. So let's kind of jump back a little bit back into our second topic, which is the site prep and how much did it cost me to remove all the junk that was in the area. So I ended up reaching out to a third party for the dump trailers that showed up, and I also reached out to a third party for the excavator rental, which I only rented for a singular day. Now, the cost of the 2 dump trailers, both hauled and taken to the landfill, so this does include a dump fee, for 2 trailers cost me $455. And for the mini excavator, the 50 horse with trailer for the day, out the door cost me $473.75. Now, of course, we're not including labor in the cost of any of that, as me and a buddy of mine were operating the machine ourselves, saving us probably a lot of money as it took us almost a full day to fully dump and load all of that material. Now, of course, after the fact, I did run my own tractor to finish leveling the land off with some fresh dirt from behind the property. I went ahead and removed any nails, screws, extra metal, extra debris that was left over from moving it with the excavator. Of course, that probably cost me about $15, maybe $20 in diesel. So we can just put that down as, the final price for doing it myself versus hiring somebody else to come out and clear and level the land. I did try to level the land myself the best I could with my own eyeballs, but after a couple of rainstorms, I kind of figured out that there's a bunch of low spots here and there, and I was really banking on the fact that the slag would kind of level it all out in the end, which now that I've been in the shop for a couple of weeks, I can testify to and say there's 2 low spots inside the shop that do retain water underneath the plastic, and I believe the plastic has ripped. So that is something that I messed up on. Now the final topic of this video, and that would be savings and any sort of extra information or tips that I would give out from doing this myself. The one biggest thing was the metal roof. I saved a load of money going on Facebook Marketplace and finding a deal for as much as the $200 that I paid for that stack of metal roofing. The guy originally listed it as 20 sheets for $200, but once we started loading it up, I was honest with him and I was like, "Hey man, we loaded more than 20 sheets. Do you want some extra money?" And he was very much appreciated my honesty and just cut me a deal for $200. So definitely, if you plan on doing this and you don't mind using used material when it comes to your roof or your walls, definitely be on the lookout for Facebook Marketplace, LetGo, or any other sort of app like that. Now, the other thing that a lot of people are probably not going to take into consideration, framing. If you do not have any experience in framing or any sort of building experience and you plan on building your own building, I highly suggest calling an expert or calling a friend who knows what they're doing, or, calling your neighbor. Offer them a beer or offer them lunch so they can gracefully give you their advice on what to do and how to do it. I have some framing experience under my belt, so I was able to frame it up to my standard that I knew, but I still double checked with an expert, or at least what I would call an expert, to make sure that I was doing everything correctly and, to his book. Now, he did tell me when I started talking to him about roof pitches, the original plan was to do a 1.9 pitch, and he told me to bump it up to a 1.6 pitch. When asking him why, he told me exactly the reason. He says you want better runoff. Also, a 1.9 pitch, even on the metal roof that you got, is going to be pushing it pretty far. Another big thing that I don't think a lot of people really mention to DIYers is if you're not comfortable doing it, or if you feel like no matter how many YouTube videos you watch, you cannot do it, don't do it. Call an expert. Yes, you're going to be paying more money at the end of the day. However, you're going to have ease of mind knowing that it was done correctly and done by a professional. I would like to go ahead and give an extra disclaimer that no, I am not an expert by any means. Yes, I cut corners here and there, but I do know that what I build will not go anywhere anytime soon unless magically an 18-wheeler flies on top of my shop. I don't believe it's going to go anywhere. And I've had a handful of people put their hands on it and verify that yes, it is a sturdy structure. What are some of the things that I probably would have done differently? Number one, I would have laid out my building a lot differently, especially when it came to string line. I most definitely would have done my string lines a lot differently to make sure that everything was plumb and straight. But not only that, but I could re-put my string lines back up and verify that everything is perfectly straight, perfectly level. I also most definitely would have asked for more help. I would have asked a lot more friends for help, a lot more buddies, or a lot more colleagues that know framing and stuff of that nature. That was somewhere that I completely lacked in, and looking back at it now, considering the fact that 90% of this shop was done by myself, I fully regret it. It took me way longer to build this entire shop than I originally intended. Now, had I had all the materials on hand, had I known exactly what I was looking for as an end result, I can very much vouch and say that it probably would have taken me a lot less time than what it actually took me. I believe, if I remember correctly, it took me about 4 weeks or 5 weeks of total build time to put everything up, screw everything together, double check all my measurements, and be able to finally look back and say, it's done. Another big thing, and it's not really a big thing, it's more of a small thing and kind of a pet peeve. I should have rented or bought an auger. I hand dug every single post for this garage, and quite frankly, going through tree roots, especially with some of the cedar trees that we have down here and oak trees that we have down here, was a major pain. Another thing is that I should have drew out my entire building exactly how I wanted it and calculated every single measurement that I could possibly think of. The reason why I say this is that when I was doing the doorway, I actually took the post on the right hand side, and it is one singular post on the inside of the original measurement. So it's about 3.5 inches in. So my doorway is not a perfect 10-foot wide. That was a mistake that I made that I realized after the concrete had set up and I started pulling measurements for the walls. But all in all, I had a very fantastic time building this thing. I learned a lot, and I'm very much proud of myself for what I achieved. I've been using the shop for about 2-3 weeks now since that last part 3 video, and it has very much come in use. Now, the one thing that I was very much banking on was a very heavy rain, so I could double check and make sure that my walls and my roof were not leaking. And so far, fingers crossed, I have had 0 leaks anywhere, and I'm rather proud of myself for that. I do plan on making numerous videos out of this garage, whether it be how-to videos, whether it be Q&A videos, whether it be review videos. I have a lot of stuff in store that I really want to get on and start making some videos on, so y'all bear with me on that, as I am quite tired a lot of the time, especially when it comes down to starting to edit, and the drive is starting to slowly go away because of how tired I am to actually make all these videos. So if I ever sound tired, I look tired, or I look absolutely just wore out, it's probably because I am. But I promise you guys, I'm trying to get you guys some content. But that more or less concludes this video. If you guys have any further questions, please by all means ask them down in the comment section down below. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, as well as hit the notification icon to get notified when I post a video. And hopefully the next video that you guys will see from me will be yet another project, something that we're actually going to start working on. I've got a couple in store right now, as well as some moto vlogs that I plan on uploading here soon. But until I see you guys in the next video, y'all take it easy.